Hey there everyone, we got some pretty massive news for Star Wars gaming today in that Electronic Arts lost their exclusive license for Star Wars video games. This means that after almost 10 years, EA will no longer be the only studio allowed to publish Star Wars games. Now this actually is a little bit different than the arrangement that used to exist back before the acquisition by Disney, where LucasArts was the publisher for all Star Wars games, kind of filling the role that EA has in the last few years. This is great news and means that we should be able to start seeing a lot more publishers and game development studios able to develop titles within the Star Wars universe. We've already seen announcements for a new Indiana Jones game under the Lucasfilm Games because it's going to be managing all Lucasfilm properties, not just Star Wars, but also a new game being published by Ubisoft and developed by Massive, the creators of The Division. All we know so far about this particular game is that it's going to be an open world game. We'll probably get a bit more information coming forward in the future, but the important thing here isn't necessarily the announcement of this game or the focus on Ubisoft. I have seen some people be a little bit afraid of the fact that Ubisoft is making a game, but the important thing is that any publisher can now approach Lucasfilm Games to be able to make a game, and the whole direction of Star Wars games is no longer just decided by EA and what they feel would work for them. The game industry as a whole has seemed to start to realize that smaller titles are able to work and more focused titles are able to work, and this is something that is hopefully going to start applying to Star Wars as well, where we'll get some massive games, some smaller games, a bunch of different experiences, rather than just what it was for especially the first while that EA had the license, where we only got Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2. We started to see a bit more coming out with Fallen Order and Squadrons, and I really enjoy both of those games. So it seems like EA is still going to be able to make Star Wars games themselves. They have announced that they're continuing their own partnership with Lucasfilm Games and that they're going to be doing other stuff. So basically this is the best of all worlds, where all of these studios are able to go forward to Lucasfilm Games and approach with their own ideas. I was a little afraid for the last little while that if EA did lose the license that it would just end up going to another publisher, and that we'd end up in kind of the same situation with fewer games than a lot of us would like coming out because it is just one publisher and they're kind of dealing with their own development studios. And it seemed unlikely that they'd be getting LucasArts back to, or Lucasfilm's games back to what LucasArts used to do, where it was the actual publisher for basically all the Star Wars games. And that isn't what we're getting right now. Instead, Lucasfilm Games is simply acting as the licensing entity. So it's all being released under Lucasfilm Games, but any new games would still require an outside publisher as well as a developer, whereas initially under LucasArts, you would see games coming out from a variety of developers but still going through the publishing of LucasArts. So again, this means we're going to start seeing games not just from EA and Ubisoft, but also other publishers, which I think is the best way to have this happen. We'll probably get a lot more games, and I'm really excited about that. Hopefully we'll hear more coming out in the future. But I think it is a bit important to kind of talk about how this process will actually work and what this might mean for certain titles. Because again, from my understanding that Lucasfilm's Games is not actually a publishing entity, it's the licensing entity. So one of the things that I've seen a lot, being that I work a lot with Empire at War, is the idea that maybe we'll be able to get Empire at War 2 now. And this would apply equally to other games that came out in earlier periods, but the exception here, or the difference here, is that we know Petroglyph has always wanted to make an Empire at War 2. The thing that still has to be kept in mind right now, though, is that you don't just need the developer and Lucasfilm Games to be on board, you do need a publisher, and in my opinion, EA is still one of the more likely publishers that would come from if we did get that. So as far as an Empire at War 2 specifically goes, I don't know that the position I would take on whether that's likely or not has changed too much, though I do think it's a lot more likely we might get other kinds of strategy and 4X games coming from other developers and publishers. When you're talking about an Empire at War 2 specifically, you're likely talking about something coming directly from Petroglyph, and they have an ongoing relationship with EA through real-time strategy games and Command and Conquer, so if they were to get the support of a publisher for this to go to Lucasfilm Games with, then it does seem like EA would be a likely candidate for that, or at least more likely than a lot of other candidates could be. But if you look beyond the specifics of an Empire at War 2, it's just as possible for another game development company and publisher to come forward with a Star Wars game from another publisher and developer, like Relic or Paradox or any other number of companies. There's obviously no reason to think any of these have happened. I'm just giving some examples here of other companies that kind of work within that 4X or RTS space that are now possibilities that we wouldn't have gotten before, and we also wouldn't have gotten had the license just switched from EA to someone else. So game developers still do need to find a publisher if they're going to come to Lucasfilm Games with an idea, but this will still hugely increase the possibility for more Star Wars games, and we've seen some people internal at Lucasfilms talking about how they're really excited personally for the future of Star Wars games right now in a way that they haven't been for a while. So I'm going to take that as a good sign for now, and I will try to stay on top of this news as it keeps coming out and as new Star Wars games get announced. August, we should hopefully start hearing about things like Fallen Order 2, this Ubisoft game, and maybe some other games in the near future. So that's all really exciting. Let me know in the comments what you guys would want to see coming out from new Star Wars games, or any new kind of titles that you'd like to see. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you next time.